and watch me educate. Yeah, we been, could've started, but it's never late. Do it for my kids, yeah, let's set it straight. Do it for your kids, gotta set it straight. It's time to regulate. We need change now. We need solo, we need...
Hey guys, today we are going to be discussing something I think is pretty important for most of us in practice. Building your practice, building the place that's going to make you your money, and building the place you have to go to every day and you spend more time at than you do with your family. So, Artin Safarian is the president and CEO of Arminco, and they do complete build-outs for medical, for dental, as well as for veterinary, which my wife's a veterinarian. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, no, I had no idea.
Absolutely. So, Artin, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for flying out to be here.
Oh, yeah, great to be here. Great meeting you.
Same here. Do me a favor, talk to us a little bit about, your origin. What was it like early world for you before you started all this? What gave you the entrepreneurial spark that led to you creating your own company?
Sure. My background, a little bit about my background. I'm Armenian, grew up in California, and then moved to Virginia. I was, growing up, I was close to both my mom and my dad. And, I hung out a lot with my dad. So when I was 7 years old, I started going to work with my dad. And, my dad is an entrepreneur, so he had his own business. That's what I grew up in. I grew up in seeing, the business that he had. And, I always wanted to have my business growing up.
So we joked a little bit off air. I told him Armenians and Cajuns both talk with their hands.
And I'm doing that right now.
I told you it was going to happen. So was there kind of a moment in your youth when you realized that you just didn't want a job? You wanted to build a future, something more meaningful?
Yes, but it didn't hit me until I was definitely out of college. You talk about it, but it's just a talk, right? You're like, I'm going to grow up and do this as you're, growing up, right? But it doesn't happen until it really happens. And that's when it happened to me. I was out of college, and I met a beautiful lady and I got married too. And I guess that's when I did my growing up, right? So that's when it hit me that no, I don't want just a job. I want to have my own job and control what I do.
So we talked a little bit about your childhood, and I want to ask you, was there a moment in your childhood, any story that you remember that you can share with us that just kind of defined the way that you do business, defined your ethics, defined your professionalism, defined your outlook?
I don't know if there was one moment that I can think of. There's a lot. I learned through experience. I always tell the story. I learned how to drive just by watching other people drive. My parents, my cousins, my uncles. So growing up in a heavy entrepreneur area, with my dad when he was, going out with partners, other business-oriented people, I always looked up to certain individuals that I admired, and I was learning from them as I was just hanging out with them. And mostly, watching them talk, watching them do things. And I remember one time, one of them was telling me, when he was younger, he grew up in Germany. And, not to date him, but it was a long time ago for him. And that's when he was like, we were young, we were like 21, and we wanted to, buy a radio, right? So we worked and we bought a radio, and then we worked harder and traded that radio for a TV, and he was telling me the story how he kept on going and getting there, and then later on in his life ended up in the United States and owned one of the biggest transportation companies. So that kind of inspired, stories like that inspired me to, be who I wanted to be, and, taking that as an example and going further.
So, of all the different things you could have done, first of all, why construction? And the next question is, why dental? How did you find yourself building dental and medical and veterinary practices? Was it kind of a strategic move for you because you saw an opening in that space, or or was it kind of a chance thing that you fell into?
So it's an interesting story, a long story, and no, I stumbled into the dental. However, I will tell you, my mom was a hygienist and a dental assistant, and she always wanted one of us, and I have two other brothers, so there's three of us. She always talked about one of us being in the dental industry, but none of us actually, went in the dental industry, right? My dad he does heating and air conditioning, refrigeration systems.
HVAC guy.
HVAC, right. So I grew up with him, again, fixing refrigerations, heating and air conditioning. And when I got licensed for it, throughout my college, I, worked as a technician. And it felt good when I was going out fixing stuff. Troubleshooting is one of my favorite things to do. So when something breaks, I like to, poke at it until I fix it, whether or not I know about that stuff. But knowing the HVAC world, taught me, construction, because in refrigeration, we were into restaurants a lot, right? And as I grew up, I developed a love for building rather than just troubleshooting. So it wasn't until out of college when I was working with my dad and I told him, I'm like, look, I see that we're doing this. We have a lot of contracts working with restaurants. I want to start building the restaurants. So, and that's what happened. I started a side business as we were, getting into the restaurants to fix their refrigeration and stuff. I advertised through that and started building 1, 2, 3, 4 restaurants, and then it just caught on until I started doing corporate restaurants. So from there, in 2004, I stumbled into the dental industry. As I was building restaurants, the difference was I was dealing with a lot of corporates at that point. I did a couple of Cheesecake Factories, Benihana's. So I stumbled into the dental industry. I had a friend whose wife was a pediatric dentist at the time, and she was going through a horrible time building her office. And, she came to me, she said what the problems she was having. I looked at it and I said, well, it's a small office. At that point, it was about 1,700 square foot of a pediatric office. Nothing like a restaurant, very easy for me at that point. Believe it or not, there's a lot of similarities when you're talking about construction of a restaurant and dental offices, from the mechanical plumbing part of it.
Right.
So, when I looked at it, I said, sure, we can knock this out, but you got to let go of, who's doing things now, because I don't want to get into, a confrontation.
With somebody else.
So that's what happened. When we started doing it, I liked it because I was dealing with the end user, which was the dentist herself. And then it hit me that it was a niche, because right in that building, other dentists came in and she just referred us, and they turned around and they loved what we did, so they started hiring us. So in 2004, we kind of, revamped our entire company. Of course, we were a lot smaller at that time. We were only 3 of us. And we said, we're going to do dentistry. We're going to learn this until we're ready to go to the next steps and do other things. And that's what happened.
Oh, I imagine with the HVAC background, getting the MedGas certifications and other things you need to build out an office was a lot easier for you than if you were coming from just a residential background.
Sure. I knew you know some of it. It's easier to learn. Medical gas is never that easy, so it's still challenges. Right now, I do a lot of surgery centers, and Category 1 certification, Quad A certifications, all that stuff. There's a lot of complications that come up, so you're constantly learning.
I think one of the things that people don't think about is so you're dealing with compressed air, and you've got a step down that causes some turbidity in the flow. A lot of people don't realize that air is a fluid, and that turbidity in the flow increases pressure, and that pressure increases condensation. So you're going to get water in your lines if you don't step it down correctly. You may not know this about me. My first company I owned was a remodeling company.
Okay, wow.
So I'm a little bit familiar.
All right. Well.
So I know some of the pain points. I'll never forget. I was working on a union job on a casino boat, and I'm looking at the plans, and I'm framing up a structural wall, and it's an 8-inch wall, and it's metal stud. It was, Coast Guard regulations are crazy, but in this 8-inch wall, they had an 8-inch ID pipe running longitudinally through the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was at the top of the wall, clipping out every single one of the metal framings.
Wow.
And so I pulled the lead aside. I said, "Who the hell came up with this plan?" And I hear someone cleaning their throat behind me. It's like, that would be me. So the engineer was there. I had to explain to him that you can't put, an 8-inch pipe running horizontally through load-bearing studs.
Right.
But I mean, it worked on paper, right?
Sure.
So I know that dealing with engineers is one of the major issues whenever you're dealing with this stuff, especially windstorm and things like that. What did you notice specifically, pain point wise, when it comes to dental, medical, and veterinary build-outs that just ordinary businesses don't encounter?
There's a lot to it that ordinary businesses don't see it happen. People see things black and white, and like you just said, engineers, architects, they're great, but they do things on paper, right? When you go to do things on site, it's a lot different, right? And it's a constant discussion, right? A good engineer, a good architect doesn't just do things this way. They talk about it. If there's an issue, they try to resolve it. So just on that note about compressed air, there's a project out where, the compressed air lines, and this is recent, they're used to, you talked about condensating, right? The compressed air line in dental practice is filling up with water. Nobody really understood why, right? But we looked at it a couple of times, and it took a while, right, until, we realized that these lines are going through the garage space that's not being
being conditioned.
Right?
Yep.
So eventually condensation is being built up, and then the water, the pipe fills up with water, and then the water came out of the lab where they were trying to use the compressed air. But it does mess up hand pieces because the water pressure and all that stuff. So it was a frustrating situation for that client until we got it figured out and then installed a couple of refrigerant dryers as per the compressor manufacturer specifications, and kind of got it resolved. But apparently a lot of people had looked at it and there were no real solutions to it.
Right.
So
No,
things like that
absolutely.
comes up. Yeah.
Well, and there's only certain things you can do. I mean, if that was in your garage, you would just install a couple of bleeders where you can trap condensation. But with MedGas, you can't do that.
Right. So apparently they had installed some drips to try to trap condensation, but it hadn't worked.
I didn't even think you could install that on MedGas.
This is not MedGas. Sorry, compressed air.
Okay,
This is the airline.
Got you.
What we were talking about, the airline. Yeah.
I wasn't certain if the airline was going to the hand pieces, since it's aerosolizing in the mouth, if it would actually come under the MedGas or not.
Yeah, no. This is not MedGas. It was just compressed air.
Got you.
So no nitrous, no nothing was part of this.
So can you share the moment where the switch just flicked on in your head? I know you've kind of gone through it briefly, but when you said to yourself, I can make a real difference in this space, and I want to specialize in it.
It was, believe it or not, that same moment when my friend's wife was struggling building it. As we got in it, I just fell in love with building a dental practice. The fact that I was starting my business and I guess she was starting her business, we kind of clicked. Soon after that, I did another space that till this day, I'm in connection with them. We kind of grew our businesses together. He grew a dental practice that he was building to a very successful one today. So it felt good being in the industry. And then going back to when I mentioned my mom wanted us to be in the dental world, right? So it kind of got me there. So it was more motivation. I tell my mom, I'm like, look, I didn't become a dentist, but I'm building the practices. So that was it. That first couple of projects, got me, knowing this is what I want to do.
I love it. Oh man, what is the most complex challenge that you've had to manage in construction? for medical and dental. And I mean both on the human side, because we know that there's two pieces to this. There's the human side and there's a mechanical side. So what are some of the most complex things you've had to deal with?
There's so many of them. When we're talking about complexity, the most common thing that we go through is, talking to the client and making sure. A lot of people come in. How do I put this? A lot of people
They blow smoke up their ass.
Well, you can say that, but a lot of
I
things,
can say that.
a lot of people, that's not where I was going. A lot of people think they want something, but they don't really want it, right?
Okay.
And it takes them a time to figure out what it is that they actually want.
So give us an example.
And yet, for example, people are like, look, I want to open up a dental practice, but they don't know if they want to bring in a specialty, right? They say they do, right? They're like, well, I'm going to bring in an endo, and then they want to do X and Y, and then you keep talking to them, but they still don't want to listen to you yet, right? Until they start knowing, okay, well, maybe this guy knows what he's talking about after they go through halfway. The problem with building, I always say, you got to plan properly, right? As I'm here in this studio, you just build this, I'm sure there was a lot of planning to this to get to the place where it is today. And I always say, you want to do something proper and not have construction problems, what I call problems, right? Construction hiccups happen. That's part of construction. That's part of building something, right?
It's part of the complexity
That's
of solving
right.
the problems.
But if you don't want to have major problems, you got to have it planned properly. And it goes back to your business plan. What is it that you want to build, right? And why? Is it proper, or is it just, this is what you're thinking?
Right. It's kind of fly by the seat of your pants.
Yeah.
It's too expensive to do that.
That's right. And as I grew, what I found out, one of the complexities in my work is actually, talking to the clients and making sure they understand what they want to build is actually what they want to build, and not, deviate from it. And once you do that, there's not actually a lot of problems. Now, if I was to pick a problem that happened on the construction side, my third project, we had a lot of drilling issues. As you know, dental projects have a lot of plumbing lines, right? And back when I started, it wasn't even, now the dental chairs have the bottled water. Mm-hmm. So back then, not only you had the airline, the suction line, medical gases, you also had to have water lines. So there was a lot of digging to be done, right? In this particular project, digging was very hard because of the slab, right? So the cost was $30,000. I had underbid the project to begin with, right? So, and here's what happens, right? When you underbid a project, you have two choices. This is what probably some contractors have bad names. They disappear, right? Or they go out and charge a change order. I knew this was my fault, had nothing to do with the client. I carried that cost through. I ate that cost, right? I covered it even though I was new in the business, even though I was just married, still, looking for the money. But I knew I had to cover it because reputation is huge for me. And I learned that at a younger age, again, hanging out with my dad, knowing what people say about my dad, knowing what people say about certain business people. Reputation is huge. What you do the right way is huge in the industry. It goes on forever, especially in a niche like dentistry or veterinary. Everybody knows you, right? Especially in your area, everybody knows you. So I think that's what the character I developed, and people wanted to come and see me as I grew. I used to be one of the younger guys. Now I find myself one of the older guys, which is a process for me. I'm still trying to deal with that.
Oh man. There's a song I'll have you listen to later. It's got a great line about that. It's about a guy who's getting older, and one of the lines is, "I'm only good at being young."
Yeah.
It's definitely a process. So what was a major project or initiative that almost failed, either because of budget, timeline, or stakeholder management? And how did you turn it around?
So one of the recent projects that I got involved in is we weren't on the project. So just to go back a couple of steps, today Arminco is a national project management company. So as throughout our building, we have added many services. We do design in-house. We do construction in-house. as well as dental equipment. So we're a full force dental equipment. We sell the equipment, we service it. And today we're a full force project management company, like owner's representation. So nationally, we manage projects all over. And we are the first team on the books. Again, dental projects are usually not huge when it comes to dollar figures. It's not a 10, 20 million, $30 million project, but a project management is a must because, throughout the years, I found out, by doing the projects, I go back, talk to clients, and they're saying, look, there's too many pieces, right? We're dealing with $500, $600, $700,000 projects, but there's too many pieces. And, you made the process great, but, I had to hold my, equipment person's hand or architect or here and there. That's when we realized, like, look, project management still is required no matter how small or a big project is. So through our project management, I got involved in a project that the contractor was hired to do a practice, and it had already taken them 8 months. And when you talk about a project failing and not opening, I haven't seen one that doesn't open, but when it drags on, right, that's already, you're busting your budget, right? And the problem that they were facing, we got involved through the landlord because the landlord is like, look, we have to start charging rent to this guy. We've given them 6 months, right? And then we give him additional 6 months to build after the drawings. So it's been a year and it's not done, right? And they're under construction for 8 months and they don't see this being completed. So that was one of the most messiest projects that I got involved. And sooner I found out that the contractor had never done a project like this, so he had underbid. The subs were not coming on the job because they weren't getting paid because the contractor was underbid. A lot of people don't
honestly,
see that.
The practice owner is really lucky that they didn't actually put any kind of liens on the practice when they didn't get paid.
Oh, I've had projects where that happens. See, a lot of people don't know that. We talk about this all the time. When you pay your contractor and the contractor does not pay the sub can lien the property. And that's something I always try to educate clients in regards to how to protect it, how to get lien waivers, why it's important. Sometimes clients get upset when landlords are requiring lien waiver, not knowing what it's for. So it is the industry, and unfortunately, it's the way the industry has taught each other. And, this is probably, dental industry is probably the only industry that people are, I don't want to say cut corners, not knowingly cut corners. And then, it's always like this. I say this and everyone in my office starts laughing. Like Art says the same thing all over again, right? It's like people don't realize you can cross the street and get hit by a bus and die until it happens, right? So I see that a lot in this industry. And unfortunately, the percentages is not high that it'll happen, but when it happens, it's a messy situation.
Big time. I think one of the things people don't think about is, my project's running a little bit over. Well, your project's running a little bit over. That's less profit you're going to make in this year of practice.
That's right.
And, a lot of these loans, they're based on you making a profit within a certain amount of time.
That's right. I had a project not too long ago where a client was comparing the contractors, and he came to me and he said, look, I want to use you. However, there's a contractor out there that's willing to put in a penalty clause of $2,700 a day if he delays. And I look at him and I'm like, we've been talking for a year, first of all. We're now in December and he wants to open. He wants to open by April, right? We're in December. He wants to sign and get started. I'm like, it's impossible, right? I'm like, you're asking me to jump off of a 5-story building. I know I'm going to die. The other contractor is putting it in the clause saying he's going to die. I mean, it's just not practical, right? Mm-hmm. I know the county you're going into. Just getting the permit is going to be close to where you want to finish, right? Either way, he really wanted to use us, but I guess something kind of, caused him to go with the other contractor. And sure enough, they delayed. So I see this guy later. He's an investor with me. He buys properties with me right now. That's how much he trusts me, right? It's like you got to go through the proper, problem, the issue to understand who people are. So I saw him later on, and then I asked him, I'm like, did you charge the contract? He's like, well, no, I felt bad. I'm like, so you lost money. You lost money by not being able to charge the contractor, by taking the BS from the contractor and moving forward with it where, it really, you can put stuff on the contract, but what good is it?
If you don't exercise.
If you don't exercise it, right?
No, absolutely.
And that's what happens when people talk about delays and stuff. And you hit right on it. I started economics, so the way I see things is a little bit different from a business angle, right? People are like, this contractor, I know he's gonna delay me, but he's cheaper. I'm like, well, let me ask you a question. When is your rent kick in?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And how much production are you thinking about doing the first 2 years, for the first 2-3 months, right? Take that, multiply it. That's how much he's costing you for delaying the project. And he's going to delay it, but you're looking at your initial cost that you're going to pay. People look at the cost in front, not in the back end, how it's going to cost. That's why project management services, when we bring that in, we try to budget things and look at things from that perspective.
Yep, absolutely.
And control it.
Well, another nice thing about that is you've got a set of subcontractors, their work. Subs can make or break you as a contractor. I mean, they can absolutely destroy your reputation.
Absolutely.
So having someone you actually know what their work standards are like and what their ethics are like is super important.
Yep. And then there's a lot of contractors that kind of leave things on their subs too. So if your sub is not an expert and the contractor is the type to leave it on the sub, that's the quality of the project you're going to end up getting.
Absolutely. So what's one misconception that people have about building a practice that you've had to fight against?
Misconception is square footage cost. This was started from when I started. People were like, it's X dollars. I think back then they were using $100 square foot to build a practice. And for a long time, it was $100 square foot. And I keep telling people, look, I do this for a living. You can use that as a rule of thumb, but there's a lot of things that are different. Let's start from the space, the building you're in, the space in the building that you're in, what it has, what it doesn't have, right? Budgeting is not like that. And people actually believe that when they hear that $100 square foot, or I think now it's, around the country, it's about $150, $170 a square foot. But in some areas, it's actually $250, $300 square foot, right?
Let's talk a little bit about that. It's not something I had planned to talk to you about, but I want you to talk to people about builder grade versus custom grade, where those expenses come from, what you end up getting. Because, sure, you can get, in building A, you could either get $100 per square or you can get $250 per square. And a lot of that's going to end up showing in the final product in the types of fixtures, the type of cabinets, are they going to be using seconds for your flooring? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. Every product, as does in dentistry, when you guys are using products, for fixing teeth, right? Every product has multiple different grades. Builder grades is the lowest cost out there, and it's used in residential. That terminology is used in residential a lot, right. The builder grades, because in residential, builders build the houses that they sell. They design it and build it, right? So they use the products they want, and then you're stuck with it unless if you come in and upgrade things, right? So every product has it. And the products that are visible is maybe noticeable to some people. Maybe flooring, right? Maybe windows, but some people don't understand that windows, in the back end, there's multiple different kinds. You can buy windows that are $300. You can buy windows that are $5,000, $6,000, right? Or you can customize them at even higher cost, right? So every product has it. And the ones that you're not noticing are wires, PVC, right? Copper piping versus PVC piping. These are the areas that make a big effect. And they dictate the cost. As recent as 2 years ago, I visited an office that they're having confrontation with the contractor, and even in the contract it says that they're going to use copper pipes, but everything is PVC over there. So what did that contractor do? Drop the cost by using a different type of product, right?
And they weren't there for the open wall inspection, so they have no idea. And
That's
they probably
right.
wouldn't know what to look for.
That's right. And that's one of the biggest, I think, problems is people are told, and this is throughout the years in the dental industry. Back in the day, where project managers were your dental equipment people. Why? Because you were buying equipment from them. They used to have the most knowledge. They kind of grabbed your project and managed it. So when I started, I saw the tail end of that. Now it's not so much the same way. All the older guys have retired. The new generation is more price competitive, and they're not managing the project. But what's happening is the same things are being told to doctors, right? And they see things from a residential standpoint, right? So who do they go talk to when they want to build? Contractor. But here's the problem. The contractor prices things out from the drawings. Until there's a drawing that tells me these are the products I need to be using, I can give you a price wherever I feel like you should be using, right?
Right.
That doesn't make me cheaper than the next contractor. It doesn't make the contractor cheaper than me. It depends on what I'm giving you. So a lot of people nowadays bring a floor plan. They do a floor plan from, let's say, one of the equipment people, right? They're like, bid on this. But you know how much stuff it's missing? You bring up the builder grade. There's actually specific stuff missing that it can dictate the price. I tell people I can build this project for you, 2,000 square foot. I can do the construction for 250,000. I can do it for 600,000. So which one is it? What do you want to see, right? And that's what it comes down. The specifications are the most important thing in the commercial space. Commercial, everything is customized. Nothing standard. Can we standardize it? Sure.
So was there a failure or a setback that later revealed itself to be like one of your greatest growth stories?
Failure in my live company or
Either one. Go where that's the thing about this podcast. You can go where you want.
Sure. I mean that I guess what stuck to me, that $30,000 was a big setback that I took it and I thank God for that actually sometimes. Like if it wasn't for that and if it wasn't for my character, I wouldn't even.
Well, you have to screw up to learn how to bid correctly.
That's right.
Everyone has to screw up to learn how to bid correctly. I'll tell you a little story about my practice because I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about founding your business and things about that, more specificity with it. But so in dental school, whenever I was a first-year dental student, I knew I wanted to own a practice. So I began looking in my first year for a location. I shopped my own location. I didn't use a commercial realtor. I noticed that there was this one building that had a vacancy, and the vacancy had been open for quite some time. It used to be a previous tile store. Mm-hmm. And so I asked to go in and look at it, and all the flooring was ceramic tile. And right in the entryway where you would open up, they had this really beautiful rosette pattern, custom inlay, and 1,875 square, shotgun style, entrance to the back, bathroom to lower, rear left. So I knew I was going to have to add one bathroom. And I think being a contractor before helped me out a lot whenever I went in here. So I knew kind of what fixture level I wanted. And so I sourced my own cabinets from a custom builder because I could actually get my side cabinets for $800 versus I think the $3,500 that the Pelton and Crane was going to be charging me. And I just upgraded it with a custom veneer wrap that I got after I got my equipment. I went for the equipment, and I went to every single showroom, and I asked if they had any scratch indents. And so I got my chairs from 3 different Henry Schein offices, pulled them from their showrooms, rear delivery, Renaissance, I know you know equipment. Pelton and Crane's out of business now.
Oh, yeah.
They had some of the most beautiful cabinets, didn't they?
Cabinetry, yes, they did. Yeah.
Their chairs are,
Yeah.
But So I sourced all that myself. I ended up coming out pretty cheaply because I was able to plan out where I wanted my ops. And whenever I did my cement cuts, I actually had them cut a little bit further in than I was going to have my hallway, so that we could cut and chisel for the walls for separating the rooms. So I was able to actually maintain the same ceramic tile all the way to the front entrance and preserve that rosette for my reception area.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up coming out really, really well on that build. I think my total build was $275 for 4 plumbed ops, one additional bathroom because they already had one there, lab. The only thing I did that was custom there was my front coffee area. I had very, very high end, and my patient bathroom area, everything was very high end and, handicap accessible and everything. But my lab, my personal office, I went with the cheapest grade cabinets that I could get away with, looked at them, made sure they weren't particle board, and whoever made particle board needs to rot in hell for all eternity. MDF's not as bad, but it's still, it doesn't belong in a moisture-laden environment unless you've got sealed plastic seams, just period.
Mm-hmm.
So, first of all, how did I do? What would you have done differently opening your dental practice?
So I actually have a question. Why did you, because you mentioned this, why did you go in without a realtor? Why not go use a commercial realtor? What was the thought process there?
Because I had already done demographic studies on the area. I knew where the overlap of the 5-mile radius of population centers were.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that the dentist to patient ratio in this specific area was 5,700 to 1. And so I knew it was prime location. So I knew about where I was searching. And I already knew the nasty trick that landlords play on you, hiding everything in the cam with an endlessly increasing cam every single year.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew as long as I cut the cam short first whenever I was negotiating, that I was going to cap my eventual rent a lot more effectively than if I was really, really harsh on my initial rent.
Right.
Because of the fact that I knew the space had been vacant for 5 years, I knew that I was able to negotiate TI, even though it was a second generation space. I was pretty certain I was going to do a better job than any commercial realtor would have done going in, and it wasn't worth the percentage.
Yeah, and you have a construction background too, so that kind of helps out.
Right.
But the reason I say that is I caution a lot of people
yes,
when they try to
absolutely.
do
I
that.
do
It's dangerous.
But they don't have my background.
No, I get it. That's why I asked why'd you do that, and I was waiting for you to say your construction background, and you were knowledgeable about the building
My
stuff.
biggest fear was that it was a burr roof, and that it was, at the time that I built, the burr was 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so you and I both know you approach 20 years on a burr roof, you're going to have leaks.
Of course.
It's not if you're
It's
going to have
not-
leaks. It's
you're
when
going
you're
to,
going to have
yeah.
leaks. So that was my biggest concern. I didn't end up having any, but a couple of the other units did.
Okay. And so it was a single story. It was one story
Single
building.
story.
Yeah.
I didn't want to have to deal with all the handicap accessibility issues, ADA employees and things like that. And,
Yeah. So it sounds like you had made up, and the fact that you only spent, you said 1,400,
1,875 square feet.
1,800 square feet, 4 ops.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like you were pretty efficient on the design. Usually 4 ops, you can probably
I should
get
have
it done with
5.
1,600 square foot.
Done
Yeah.
5. But I'm
1,800
claustrophobic, so I wanted a little bit bigger ops,
Yeah.
and I just couldn't fit them.
1,800, you could fit 5.
Yep.
Usually rule of thumb, I tell people 400 square foot per op. You should be able to fit that. So it sounds like you've done well there. Negotiation wise, sounds like you got pretty good TI money. Free rent, I'm assuming, was all
Free rent for 6 months.
and at that time was pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 2012.
So at that time that was pretty standard.
I think my biggest win was the cam. I really do. Well, that and the TI. Getting
Yeah.
TI in a second generation space is hard.
Yeah.
But what would you have done differently? And what questions do you have, if you have any? And what would you do if you were starting a dental practice the same way? 2012.
So you're right from starting from the location. I think what I would have done the same is understand the location that I want to go into. Because especially if you're trying to control a budget, I always say it starts from that location, right? And going into the location, you can get TI money, you can get free rent that will offset your budget. So knowing that location, I would have done the same thing. I would have tried to squeeze in that fifth op. And I think for and I'm assuming you didn't bring any associates. That was yours?
I was going to bring in a periodontist who's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
He hadn't yet graduated, but I was going to have him come in and work on the weekends doing perio surgeries.
Had you brought him, you would have felt the need of that fifth op a lot more,
but
right?
Believe it or not, I actually ended up not building out the fourth op. I converted it into a lab.
Okay.
Did a lot of full mouth cases. Working out of 3 ops, I ended up, our collections were 158 a year, working 3 days a week.
So one hygienist and you? Just one hygienist. You didn't need an overflow room.
Extreme efficiency in systems.
I know a guy that does this. Actually, I was with him last night before we were talking about the practice last night before I came in. That's very rare. Not a lot of people can make that happen. But
no, I'm neurotic though.
Yeah, this guy's the same way. He's got 5 ops, but he's only using 4 of the chairs. One hygienist, and he is running lean now.
I'd recommend anybody if they're looking at building a practice just from resale value, you want 5 ops or at least the ability a 5th op plumbed. And it's always less expensive, people, to plumb your ops when you build the practice than to go back and have to do cuts and then reconnect.
Sure.
It's think about it like a volume discount.
Sure. And then what did you do for equipment?
For equipment, during dental school, I looked on eBay and I looked for labs that were going out of business and dental offices that were going out of business or people who were selling their equipment. Other than the chairs, which patients understand, they understand the chair they sit their butt in the reception area and the chair they lay back in when you're working on them and how they were treating it in between, but they don't know a damn thing about dentistry other than that.
Yep.
So I skimped in other equipment like my ultrasonic. I bought used in a bundle, and then I turned around. I sold the rest of that bundle for more than I had paid for the bundle itself. So I got that for free. I bought a brand new Tuttenauer. Midmark M11. Whenever I opened, I was going to get one of the fast steriles, but I decided not to because I started reading on some of the forums about the gasket failures. If you remember back in 2012, they had a huge issue with the material they were producing their gaskets out of, and I think they've cleared that up now.
Oh yeah.
But at the time, I decided I wasn't going to go down that road, and I knew the M11 was a freaking beast of a sterilizer.
They're a good unit, yeah.
Well, my wife had one.
Okay.
So
you were familiar with it.
I cheated.
Yeah.
All of my hand instruments I bought from all my hygiene packs because I was a cassette user because it's much more efficient. I bought cassettes every single year I was in dental school. When hygienists graduate, they sell all the stuff that they were forced to purchase. And so I'd buy cassettes for $75 a cassette filled with instruments, and 1 or 2 instruments paid for that right there.
Right.
I'm trying to think of anything else.
Did you budget your project? I'm just curious. So before I give you what I think,
I am.
Like, you had a budget in mind.
A job budgeting my projects. I can show you the spreadsheets I built later.
Yeah.
But for my budget, because I was worried that I was still clueless because I hadn't practiced dentistry and I hadn't built a dental practice, I went to Burkhart, I went to Patterson, and I went to Henry Schein, and I asked all 3 of them to do a build-out sketch with their recommended equipment. And then I thought about the procedures I knew I wanted to do versus the dream of where I wanted to be eventually. And I purchased the things for the stuff I wanted to do, but I looked to make sure I had the utilities and what I call the physical plant necessary to provide the other treatments. Things like making sure my compressor was big enough, my vacuum was big enough to push 5 ops if I had to do something like take away my personal office. So didn't budget myself, but I used their budgets as a guideline.
Sure. So when you went that route with equipment and cabinetry, because it sounds like you saved a lot of money there, right?
I did.
What did that allow you to do?
Well, it allowed me to do dumb things like upgrade my patient chairs to have massage and leather covers. I knew that leather wore better than the fake stuff. And you probably remember Pelton and Crane before they shut down their, I can't remember what it was called. You know, the luxury leather line.
Oh yeah,
that
they had the ultra leather.
the ultra leather. That's it.
The ultra leather
It was fantastic. It wore really well, and it worked really well with the
massage and
cleaners.
stuff. They had the massage
It had the massage. It didn't have the heat, and that's the thing all the patients asked for.
So you still spend money on the chair.
Spend money on the chair.
What the advice I give the dentist and the
is
reason
to get greens.
is, well, no, when you save money, right? When you're saving money and you have a budget, right? The more you can save, the more you have for working capital, which is the most important thing. You know, when I start in the industry and I keep in touch with my original dentist that I built for, right? We grew up together. We kind of, talk business together, right? Every one of them says, we wish we had more working capital.
That's exactly what I was going to go. I wish I had.
But you spend it on the chairs.
I ended up with 75,000 working capital, which is less than I recommend people have.
Well, that's what Shine Benko Patterson will tell you to have.
Yeah,
Back in the day,
150.
Yeah. Nowadays, I'm saying 100 plus. Definitely is a good working capital. But back in the day, Patterson, Benko, Shine were saying 75,000 is what you need, and people actually believe that. And that's
because stupidly I listened, right? They wanted to sell me more equipment. People, your dental equipment rep is not your friend. Just period. It is a transactional relationship. The more you buy from them, the nicer they're going to be. They'll bring you treats and stuff at your office. It is all about separating you from the stuff in your wallet.
Yeah, I completely agree, and that's one thing people have done wrong. Dentists have done wrong in the past, and they continue doing it wrong by, listening to those things and paying more attention to those things. One thing was, like I said, you did great in cabinetry, saving money on cabinetry. You've done great in, saving money on construction at 250.
And I screwed up some places. If I had to go back and do it again, I would have definitely done some things differently. Yeah. I think every dentist has what I like to call the closet of regrets.
Yeah.
The dumb shit we buy that we never use, or it never gets integrated totally into our practice.
And you have that in everything. We have that too.
Oh yeah.
In construction, we have tools we never use. So, but some of it you deserve. Some of it you gotta have it. It's part of growing up. It's part of you got it. You're working for a reason.
You got to make your own cautionary tales.
That's right. That's right. But you're so right when it comes to equipment. In fact, one of the reasons why our company brought in equipment and started doing equipment was exactly seeing what I was seeing out there. The fact that when I did equipment and people used to come and look at equipment, we showed, because we carried all the brands, and when we were showing everything, people were shocked. They're like, "Where did you guys get this?" I'm like, "Well, Benko has it too." They're like, "But we haven't seen it." I'm like, "But they have a place where they have 36 ops. All of them have different chairs, right? They have this chair there, right?" And the reason is because it's a lower end chair from the aspect of cost, right? Not because it's not functioning. It functions, right? It does everything every other Pelton and Crane chairs did, right? A lot of people thought Pelton and Crane chairs were the only ones that had massage. Maybe they were the first ones, right? But there are other chairs out there that had the massage, that had the ultra leather, all that stuff, right? So, a lot of people don't know, and they spend a lot more money, giving it away to an area where they can maybe be lower. Now, granted, if that's the chair you want, that's what you want to work on, that's a different story.
But make an informed decision.
Understand what else is there out there for you. Maybe there's a similar thing you can do to use and keep the cost lower. And that's a learning curve everyone has to probably go through. And if I'm looking at an experienced dentist versus a dentist that's starting new, if a dentist open up the third, fourth, fifth practice, they really don't pay attention to what their equipment is at this point. They're like, "Look, Art, I just want to start with all 6, but give me something that I can afford that all 6 are there. I don't want to start with 3 and then add on," right? So if they're relocating their practices, or if they're opening up their third, fourth, fifth location, and they know they have the bandwidth to start right away with associates. So that's what they're looking at.
Oh, they're already cash flowing.
They're already cash flowing. That's right.
You're in kind of a unique position with everything that you guys do, if you feel able to do so. Can you talk to me about equipment companies or specific equipment from different companies to avoid, run as fast as you can, maybe some hidden gems, and reliability and maintenance? So I'm gonna leave a lot on the table for you to pick up there.
Sure. So equipment is a good discussion. When you say equipment company, are we talking about the manufacturer or the actual dealer? Or two different things.
The manufacturer and the dealer.
Right. So manufacturers, it's almost like cars. Can I say one car is much better than another car? I mean, yeah, there are quality differences, right? But they're gonna run the chair is gonna run the same way the other chair is gonna run. People tell me I have, I mean, I guess I can say it out there. They say, I'm gonna give you two examples. People tell me, look, I've had an ADAC but never breaks, and then I have other people say I have angle and an ADAC. My ADAC breaks all the time, but angle hasn't done anything. Right? Those are maintenance things. That's gonna happen to everything. I'm a mechanic. My background is mechanical. Mm-hmm. Right? The first thing I learned from my dad. Look, you can go to the best manufacturer and you might end up with a product that, breaks sometimes, or it never breaks, but once you touch it once, it starts breaking, right? Maintenance is a key. I don't think there's a bad chair out there that's being manufactured here in the U.S. I can tell you that. Mm-hmm. There are some chairs that comes from China and stuff that I always say, look, Danzero is one of them. I say stay away from it. The reason I say that is because no one wants to install it. Danzero, right?
I was actually going to ask you specifically about them because they've got like 3-op practices and things like that, and it's such a great price. But then I looked around and no one knows anything about them. No dentists have used them. No installers know how to do it.
Because if you get a Danzero package, it is a nightmare to install it. You install it, the parts don't connect properly. It becomes a problem, right? When I'm looking at our techs install it, it's like, okay, we're not going to install this anymore.
I dodged the bullet because I thought about them whenever I opened.
Yeah, because if you're going to go that route, I tell people, and I get it, they go that route because they want to save costs. There are so many in the market in the U.S. that are better products. You can keep the cost as low as Danzero. Again, I've never bought a Danzero chair. I don't know how much they are, but look, ADS is a product that's being, put together in California. They're still a Asian product, but it's being put together in California. They're a better product cost-wise. You can do the entire operatory chair unit light. I think at this point is about $10,000, like the whole thing.
That's a thing of beauty,
right? So I mean, but at least it's not as bad as as a Danzero product where it's harder to install. People don't want to install it. If something breaks, no one wants to come out because that's where your challenge is going to be. You're saving money a little bit in the beginning until it breaks. Once it breaks and no one wants to touch it, then you have a problem. Or you're saving money buying the product, but then you're paying a high install cost, right? Because installers are like that. If I do labor, I want to be in and out, right? It's not what the product looks like at the end. It's how the product gets to me, right? You've seen packages. We laugh sometimes when we get packages from manufacturers, like boxes are not properly put together. You got to find parts from different boxes. It becomes a problem, right? And that's what happens. Like, speaking of, an example I can give you is you mentioned cabinetry. Some people, believe it or not, there was a time where people were buying IKEA cabinets, right? Do they work? Yeah, it works, right? Especially for lounges, staff lounge, reception area. Maybe not so much for your 12 o'clock if you're going to put your unit on the cabinet, right? But it's a cabinet, it works. But there's a problem. Contractors, installers don't want to deal with that because if the product is coming and it's dang damaged, because IKEA cabinets, they don't come assembled. You have to assemble it on the field, right? Once you assemble it on the field, millions of things can happen. Now you're paying a high labor cost versus saving money on manufacturer's costs, right? The product itself. There are cabinets out there that you can get at a lower cost, just like you found your side units at $800. You didn't go to IKEA, right? So there are out there. There are people out there. There are custom cabinet company out there locally that can do things that you want for the cost. Same thing on manufacturers, right? Stuff like that I would stay away from. But is there one that I would recommend? I always recommend efficiency. You have to work on the product yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
I tell this to doctors. Me as a patient, as long as the chair is comfortable, I don't care what else it looks like, because I'm coming to a dentist. I'm already under anxiety, right? I don't care if that's an ADAC, a Pelton and Crane. It looks good. It's clean. And if it's comfortable for me to sit on, I'm good to go, right? The rest is the equipment you use to work on it, right? So I've had people, they go, oh, I got an ADAC chair, but the unit is not ADAC. The unit comes from the back, and it's Beaver State.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, then why'd you buy an ADAC chair? Right? Your main part is the unit itself. The doctor's unit is the main part. You actually got a Beaver State, which is a great product, by the way, right? So, what was the point of paying extra for the chair itself?
I know whenever when I was building, I really heavily leaned toward getting Belmont instead, because I'd seen so many old practices. The problem is they freaking looked old, and I didn't realize at the time how easy it was to recover the upholstery.
Mm-hmm.
Or I might have actually ended up with Belmonts, because just mechanically I had seen some of them in service for 30 years, with minimal repairs. But I think one of the issues that you put your finger on earlier is manufacturer versus sale. But even within the manufacturer, for instance, my handpieces. I loved my handpieces. I was all electric for many, many reasons that if anyone's ever curious, just ask me and I'll tell you why. But the handpieces themselves that I had were absolute rock solid. I've got big hands, so I was able to get big handpieces. You've got better heat dispersion then. You have less issues in the handpiece. But my delivery unit, so there were Cavos. I didn't say that at first because I knew as soon as I said Cavo, you were going to make a face. So the delivery units, the servos in them, were going out once a year,
mm-hmm.
every single unit. And I think I ended up getting a non-Cavo servo to replace it and never had the problem again.
Mm-hmm.
But there are certain things, even within different companies, that they make amazing handpieces, but their delivery unit's crap. Do you have any cautions on those? And did anyone else have that same issue with the delivery unit? The Cavo was just crap, but their handpieces were amazing, or anything like that?
That happens everywhere, right? You cannot specialize in every single part of anything you're manufacturing, right? And that's what happened with Cavo. Cavo actually was a handpiece company.
Oh, well, that explains why the handpieces
Then
were awesome.
they came up with the delivery units, right? So because of that, maybe their special attention was on handpieces, and that's why, yes, there's been, back in the day, there's not a lot of people that go with Cavo nowadays on delivery. I don't even know if they're out there in the U.S. right now.
You guys are welcome. I was the guinea pig.
Selling Cavo at this point. But yeah, there are some out there that's that way, and that's why I recommend. Going back to the question you asked me, which product I would like. Like, look, we've gone to manufacturers. We've seen these products, right? One of the ones, obviously, ADAC is ADAC. They have a good product. They're solid. They're expensive, right? But it's interesting you mentioned builder grade with construction. There's the same thing. ADAC has the same thing, right? You have the higher end ADAC, which is the solid product. But then they have the 300 series, which is not as people think it should be, right?
But it's got the ADAC name, right?
It's got the name. But see, that's the problem. When they say we bought the ADAC and then they're like, oh, but it broke down. You bought the 300 series, right? I don't want to call that the builder grade, but it's their builder grade, right?
Let's face it, it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, so if you were going to go with the ADAC 300, there were other better products to go to, right? One that's actually in the same area from a manufacturer standpoint is Angle. I like Angle. Angle is being manufactured here in the U.S. I don't know if you've been into their plant, but they build every single part themselves.
That'd actually be a pretty cool little field trip to go out there and tape that.
I recommend that. If people are trying to, understand, the different chairs and why this but not the other. You know, there are companies out there that'll fly out, especially if you're buying 6, 7 chairs. You know, if you request, your dealer will fly you out there to see the manufacturer and stuff, right?
Yep.
So it works out, you know. If it's look-wise that you like, another decent product is Flight. They are actually being manufactured in Toronto area in Canada, a Canadian company. They look like ADEC. So people like that product because they're like, oh, that looks like ADEC, right? So they've kind of copied the look a little bit, and it looks good. And they're a solid company. They're on the lower cost, right? If you're looking at the most expensive ADAC being at $26,000 for the whole package, Flight is going to be around 14, 15 maybe. So big savings there, right? But what you're going to find out, most of the parts on most of these chairs are from one manufacturer.
Yeah,
at the end of the day, they're all from the one manufacturer, right? And most of them were DCI, and now we know DCI is making chairs, right? And it's catching on. People are now switching to DCI, going with DCI, and that from that perspective.
Yeah, it's a point I was going to bring up earlier that I was going to have you speak to, since you guys are in the position where you're repairing some of this equipment as well. I want to talk about buying used equipment, including used chairs and experiences that people you've worked with have had with those. But I want to make a point here, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm willing to be very wrong anytime.
Sure.
So it's my feeling like if you can do that, and the freight isn't going to kill you, which I think is what most people don't think about, is the freight charges, because freight is
on used equipment.
On used equipment. Okay. So let's say you're buying chairs, you got to ship that freight,
sure.
And freight shipping is just expensive. So if you're doing something like that, in general, most of the things that are going to break on the chair or any other piece of equipment are not the metal parts. In general, I mean, there's some chair elevators I know that there were some major issues with. But in general, those were still plastic gears that
sure.
were moving a metal back. But my feeling on that is, as long as you go through the thing with a fine-tooth comb and you change every single O-ring and you change every single piece of tubing and you use the right ones to replace them, you're probably going to have a pretty trouble-free piece of equipment for a lot lower price. Again, as long as the freight doesn't kill you. What are your thoughts on that? And
you're right, but it's exactly what you just said. The freight kills you. The uninstalling and reinstalling kills you. So the labor cost is high. So then it comes down to me knowing what I know. Then I say, why do you do that when you can buy another brand? That's a decent brand with brand new equipment for everything that it's costing you right now, right? The headache is not worth it at the end of the day.
That's kind of what I ended up going with, like I said, new equipment that was scratch and dent.
Yeah.
As a kind of, that was my consolation with going with new equipment. I knew I still had a warranty, right? But I was pretty certain if I had gone in the other direction, if I did what I said, I'd have probably come out pretty well. Because, I mean, mechanically, as a contractor, or anyone who fixes anything, it's always the rubber gaskets that go out, or it's dry rotted vacuum lines or what have you. I have seen some nightmares with dentists who attempted to do that, but they didn't understand the difference in flexibility of vacuum lines, and they didn't buy the right rigidity. They didn't buy the right wall thickness, and it would collapse on itself or what have you.
Yeah.
But yeah, just food for thought, guys.
I always say that at the end of the day, it's not worth it. Look, you're going to do research. You're going to spend time. Time is money, right? If you are a startup dentist, if you're working somewhere and you're going to not work just to do the research, go to places to purchase this, at the end of the day, when you do your calculation, it's not worth it.
Yeah, because your time's worth money.
Yeah, and if you're an existing dentist, you got to practice to run, right? If you're going to put that aside, if you're doing it for fun, that's a different story. If someone says, but I enjoy it, this is my fun, okay, that's rare, but I'll buy that, right? But if you're doing it to save money, I can tell you a lot of times there's so many different places you can save money. Put your time and effort in areas that count.
No, I absolutely agree. Like I said, I decided to go against it, but I was wondering. I've been wondering for years, were my calculations correct? And it sounds like they were.
Yeah.
Hand instruments, guys, buy those used. Don't buy the new shit.
Yeah.
So, when you founded and scaled Arminco, I keep wanting to say Arminco.
It's actually Arminco. It's
okay.
Arminco.
Well,
It's
okay.
Arminco.
Well, I was right.
Arminco, yeah.
What was your vision? And how did it evolve?
Sure. When I started Arminco, our vision was construction, as I explained earlier.
Mm-hmm.
As I got into the business aspect of things, I wanted to be more the people that started the business. So that's when, we started bringing in our own architectural design department. We brought in, our dental equipment department. So it was all to be, look, we can start this business and give it to you, hand it to you so you can do the dentistry. And earlier on, you mentioned, failures, and I've been thinking my failures, right? You don't succeed if you don't fail. That
But
saying
you don't
is being
keep
said.
succeeding if you just think about the failures either.
That's correct. And fortunately, people scale things differently, failures and success, right? Something might be successful to me, but it might not be successful to you, right? Something might be a failure to me, but it might not be a failure to you, right? And for me, I don't know if I have a major failure. It's just been bumps in the road that you learn from, right? But not one that I'm not doing. That's why when you said failure, I've been thinking, what have I failed that I've kind of put it aside and I've said, I'm never doing this again.
Right.
Other than that, maybe, I'm a soccer player playing soccer. I got injured and I'm not that. I failed in that, right? So I'm not doing that anymore. So from looking at it from that perspective, we try to grow this company, right? And to a point where I've even teamed up with dentists to open up multiple practices, right? And I'm trying to connect the two now. That's something maybe I haven't succeeded yet. Personality issues, partnership things where we've started it and then, okay, it doesn't click. So I've kind of handed over to the dentist and, asked them to buy me out or they wanted to buy me out. So I've done and flirted with things like that. So where the company has evolved is we want to be the company that actually can set up your practice and hand deliver it to you, let you do what you do great, and understand that if you've given us the budget, we will deliver to you according to that budget with the same money that you want or you need for working capital. That's how our company has evolved. And as recent as 2 years ago, we even started a real estate arm, which again is the number one thing that when we're talking about budgets and keeping a budget, that is required. That's what we need to keep that.
So that's actually a really great segue into my next question. You've been involved in kind of the growth arc of a lot of practices, both building them during startup, helping them to expand as they grew. What are some different practices or things that differentiate the practices that struggle versus those that are just extremely successful?
Very good question. And a lot of people ask me that question. There is no magic wand that you can say or a recipe that you can say this guy is successful because of X, Y, and Z, right? I think there's multiple features that someone can be successful. One, in my mind, if you're a great dentist, you will be successful. If you know what you're doing, good quality, eventually you will be successful. You just got to believe in yourself, right? So I think that weighs a good 50% in the dental field that you're a great dentist. And when I say great dentist, because eventually if you keep your practice lean and you collect patients aren't stupid. They know, they talk. They'll say so-and-so is a great dentist. Irrelevant of your location. Eventually, you will be successful, right? Again, we all have different meanings of success. I'm not talking about you'll be a millionaire, but you will have a successful practice where
Which could be.
you could be. No, even you will be, but I'm not putting a time frame to it, right?
Right.
Obviously. But that's, to me, that's 50% of it. The rest is how you run your business, right? What kind of people you hire, marketing, and branding, what you do, right? Because people like it when you talk to them, when you're interpersonable, right? You're talking to them. And nowadays, I see younger dentists, they struggle with that. I mean, even reaching out to us, we went from a phone call going out to dinner to signing a contract to a text, can I get a price?
I always get in trouble when I talk about personality
Yeah.
types in different generations, but it's absolutely a thing.
Yeah, I even have friends out there, and they're like, I don't know what's happening. I'm like, I'll tell you what's happening. It's your personality. He didn't come back because you didn't explain it to him properly. I can tell you because I don't even want to come back here. Right? I can joke with them because we know each other, but still, it's I think there's different dynamic to success. But I can tell you right now, if you know in anything, if you know what you're doing, you'll always be successful. And if you do work that is stable, that is solid, people will refer you. It's word of mouth. And organically, that's how Arminco kind of grew too. It was a word of mouth. I did not advertise until maybe 7, 8, 9 years later, where we were getting bigger and collecting more people, hiring more people, and we're like, okay, we need to advertise and go national at this point, right? Otherwise, the best thing is your work. That I can tell you will be solid. The rest, marketing, location, starting properly is the key. We talked about that, right? If you start properly, you save money, you use that as working capital, you use it wisely for working capital, your practice will be successful faster.
Absolutely.
So those are the areas that
I would say, and I think this encapsulates what you're saying there, and I think you'll agree with it. The most successful monetarily dentists are dentists who treat their practice like a business.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds so simple, but by nature, dentists are technicians. They start a practice because they think they can cut a better crown, or they can make prettier restorations. In reality, what it comes down to is starting a practice and treating the practice like a business that simply serves to allow you to engage your technician side.
True. I definitely would agree with that. And to be a business person too, also you have to learn and
be willing to learn.
Be willing to learn, right?
Yeah.
You want to learn from each other. And I think that's one thing I have noticed. Maybe it's me, but I've noticed dentists don't like competition. They shy away from competition. And I tell them, you learn from competition, right? And I say that because growing up in this industry, I've had so many comments where, don't bring so-and-so in my office. I don't want to see how I built it, right? Like they can find out
Right.
whether I bring him or not, right? Or, I don't want to talk to him because he's coming down the street from me. I mean, you want to talk to him so you can figure out what he's doing, right? We don't have that in any other industry. We don't have that in the vet world.
No, you don't.
We don't have that in the medical world. And I wonder why. You're a dentist. Maybe you can explain that.
I think it's because of dental school, the way that they dental school is nothing but hazing the entire time. It is people looking down on your work and hoping to see you fail rather than succeed. And I'm going to probably piss some people off right now, but I always give an honest answer. The truth is that most people who teach at a dental school are failures. They failed in practice, and teaching is their fallback. And it's rare that you get, and amazing when you get a professor who chose teaching because that's what they wanted to do and they've got a passion for it, because they will teach you everything they know, and they're excited enough about it that it makes it fun to learn it. But most dentists who teach are burnout. business failures or clinical failures, and they have to teach. And so their default position is that they want to see other people fail, whether they realize that consciously or not. Subconsciously, I think it's their motivation.
Wow, that's interesting. Never thought about it that way.
Yeah, but if you think about it,
Yeah,
it explains it all, doesn't
wow.
it?
Yeah, because I mean, to be successful, you got to be able to learn, wanting to learn, open-minded. You got to be open-minded, and you got to give time to whatever you're doing. You know, most, again, dentists I'm looking at are very passive-aggressive. Even when they're building their practice, you don't know how many people they start by saying, my office manager is in charge. Then you get halfway done, next thing you know, they're flipping out because the decisions that's being made is not according to what they want. Right? Well, did you put boundaries? Did you give them guidelines? And if you said your office manager is in charge, why aren't you trusting your office manager? They've done all this stuff so far, right? To this point.
You that those dentists weren't successful.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And throughout, you know, when I measure success, right, I'm looking at these successful dentists, and you know, they're all of them have one thing in common: they're open-minded. You know, one of my closest one, I think he's been in your podcast, Dr. Harshit Agrawal. Shout out to him.
I love him.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
Shout out to him. You know, I met him. I built the office that he purchased. So I built it the first time. He purchased his office, then expanded it and relocated it. So when I built that office, he just came to me, and it was just, we clicked. You know, I don't know him as much as I've known other dentists, but we clicked from day one. Why? Because he doesn't question me. He didn't question me just to question me. He was questioning me to learn from me. And I do the same way. I'm the same type, right? I'm not a dentist, but when I'm asking a question, I want to learn to see what he's doing, how he's living, because that's how we get better, by pushing one another, not by challenging one another, not by, you know, wanting him to fail because he's competing or he's not competing and things like that. So yeah, we clicked, and you know, I'm watching his success, and you know, I'm enjoying just being part of it.
Yeah, he's doing some really amazing things right now. We've got a couple of side projects together.
Yeah.
So talk to me about ensuring that the build side of a practice build out works with or integrates seamlessly with the practice side. So far as how do you connect the realities of what you can do with the expectations and desires of the client?
So I believe you're one of the first things we look at is everything is possible, but it needs to be practical in the workplace. And yes, there are things that, you know, people are like, well, this is modern. Yeah, but is it easily functionable, right? When you're saying that, we look at patient flow a lot when we're just designing any practice. And that's what comes to mind when you're saying that. I believe I'm answering your question. So patient flow is huge, right? How you operate in your practice. And when we look at a practice, I don't look at a practice as you're a startup and you're going to start with 2 chairs and you're not going to have too many patients for the first year, second year, right? I look at it when you're fully functional. 3 years down the line, if you're 5 ops, fully seeing patients, that's how I look at a practice. So when we're looking at it from there, and there's a lot of things being discussed where, you know, if the patient flow is not proper, you're struggling. You just don't know you're struggling, right? Losing time in dentistry is a lot. I've been in dental practices when I was first started, and I'm looking at the doctor doesn't even have time to eat lunch. He's seeing patients going from here and here, and then I'm looking at the practice. He's just walking and running too much because the flow's not there, right? I bet you anything, had he renovated and stopped and said, let's do this a little bit different, let's set it up a little bit different, he would have cut his time and he would have had time to eat.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite things to tell people is busy is not the same thing as productive.
That's right. That's right. So that's what we do when we come to the build side. And nowadays we have, back in the day it was more, let's concentrate on the operatory. Now it's less the operatory. People pretty much got the operatory all figured out how they want to do it. It's mostly all the other areas where your sterilization is, and the major area is reception, right? Reception desk, especially after COVID, threw a monkey wrench into waiting area and receptions. And nowadays people want, I guess it's more for look purposes. They want like a hotel lobby reception, except maybe the trend goes there where we're now more digital possible, right? But reception desks are supposed to be roomy so that your receptionist can sit and work. I've had people come to me and they're drawing reception desk and it's like this much space for the reception, 2 feet. I'm like, you know what 2 feet looks like? I have to bring it, draw it. I'm like, okay, I want you to work from here for 1 day. Tell me if you're comfortable working from there, right?
Take 2 sheets of paper, tape them together. Sheets of paper are 11 inches long.
Right.
You've got 22 inches there.
That's right.
Whenever you're looking at the side rails of that thing, that's going to eat up almost 2 inches. So there's your reception desk.
So reception desks are, probably one of our biggest focus right now, the past, I would say, couple of years, where people want to kind of make it smaller, not realizing that you got printers, you got scanners, you got, we don't have fax machines anymore, but you got things that the receptionist needs to be able to maneuver around. Now, granted, I'm looking at some older receptionists where it's huge, but that's because back in the day they had their files, and now they've removed the files, they have extra space, right? But it needs to be sized properly. Nowadays they're trying to, downsize it, which is not good either.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is again, in the realm of all things are possible, you can do that, but if you plan it carefully with all of these things that you're talking about, if you make a communal area that's accessible to a check-in and a check-out, where you've got your printers for the checkout in one place and your, whatever else, your scanner is in a separate place that's accessible for your check-in desk, you can workflow it. But the thing is that I think most dentists don't understand those positions well enough to know what they do on a daily basis so that they can even map out the points of inefficiency when they're planning a space.
That's right. And it comes down to, again, helping each other out. Most dentists, where do they learn from? That one location or 2 locations that they worked at. When they're starting their practice, maybe they went to school, so they've seen their school clinic, right?
Right.
And then they came out and worked maybe in a couple of locations. And if they worked in the older locations, they can't really compare because the older locations, they're not functioning properly. So they know what they don't like. However, they don't know what they would like.
Right.
And that is, creates a curveball where that's where my discussion goes with them when we get to that point.
Well, and then you run into that same thing that you said earlier, that red ocean kind of a mentality, where other dentists aren't going to let you go in to see their practice.
That's right.
So one of the things I did whenever I built mine out is I realized that very quickly because I went to introduce myself to the local dentist a year before I was going to open because I wanted to know him. And I hit this wall, that front desk.
Yeah.
Gatekeeper. And so what I did is I started going out further away from where my practice would be. I went to different cities and I said, hey, look, I heard you went to UT. I went to UT. I'm going to open a practice. It's like 80 miles over there. I just kind of want to see what you did because I've heard your practice is amazing. So then, of course, the dentist is like, well, yeah, my practice is amazing. Let me show you what I did.
Yeah.
So a little bit of subterfuge there, but I really wasn't opening up where they were.
Yeah.
But it's the only way I could get into other dental offices to see what people had done and hear their rationale behind it, and then kind of say, yeah, well, what are your pain points? What do you wish you had done differently?
Right.
I
mean, that everyone should do that, but they shouldn't be shy from doing that. That was my point. It's like,
well, they're in the service industry. If they have a problem talking to people, they're probably in the wrong industry.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
But we both are, though, aren't we?
Yeah. I actually give you something popped up. I had a client a long time ago back. This is probably in 2007-08. And I had a client, she wanted to go visit practices to kind of get ideas of what's out there. and also a couple of practices that I built for her to see the quality of our work, right? So we spent time. I personally spent time. I took her around. We probably visited 5-6 practices, in the neighborhood, closer by to where she was going into, and then we built a practice for her, right? When we build the practice, I complete a practice. We like to take photos, right? I told her, I'm like, Doc, we like to come and take photos. She didn't allow, and I'm like, I thought there was a problem she has with me, right? This is the growth that I've had learning the industry, right? And I called because my guys were like, she's not allowing to take pictures, and I'm like, maybe there's a problem. Let's try to fix it, right? I call her up. I'm like, is there an issue that we need to fix? I'm hearing you don't want to allow us to take photos. He's like, Art, I don't want people looking at my practice and taking ideas. And I'm like, but Doc, you did the same thing, right? She's like, yeah, I don't feel comfortable, right? Fast forward 4 years later, she's opening up her second practice, right? She calls me up. She wants to do the same thing. She's like, I'm ready for the second one. So she comes in, and there's no reason to visit offices. You own your office, right? And you've seen what's out there already. You're an experienced dentist. You already know my quality, so I'm not taking you to show you my quality. I build your office, and you're back to me, right? She's like, can we visit a couple of offices? I'm like, absolutely not. She thought I was joking. She didn't know I remember, right? She's like, why not? I'm like, well, if you don't want to teach others, they shouldn't teach you.
Yep.
I'm not going to be responsible for that. I'm like, she actually took that personally and didn't use me for the second office.
Oh, that's so funny. Would you have done anything different?
Would I have done anything?
Would you have done anything different?
No, I would do the same. That's my personality. Look,
that.
I'm a straightforward guy. There's been projects I can tell you that I turned down, even earlier on, because for me, look, if you're doing the work, if you and I are working together, we're right now doing a podcast, right? We're in a form of partnership together, right? You're hiring me as your contractor or your project manager as much as I'm hiring you, right? I'm not here, I know I'm not going to do one job and be a millionaire. That's not what I'm here. I'm not here for the sell. It's got to make sense. And sometimes, especially when we're talking about owners representation, project management, if I don't click, if we don't have the same vision, why would you hire me to do your job? I'm not for that. So yeah, I'm a straightforward guy. I let her go, and people would ask me, "You're not the only one. Would you done differently?" No, same thing.
Let's see if I can pull something up here. So I took a little bit different tact. So my supplier was Henry Schein. And they said, hey, you built this beautiful practice. We really want to show it off. We want to feature you in Sidekick magazine. So I said, yes, but I want a press release and I want a free copy. A free copy, no big deal. We'll have to talk about the press release. So I got the press release. And I had them send it out to all the local papers. Local dentist featured in national magazine for innovation in practice design.
Oh, you got the article?
That's my place right there.
Nice. Congrats.
So it's a different
Was that you
thing.
in the picture?
Yeah, that was
at the end?
That was me a little bit hairier and a lot heavier.
Wow.
So yeah, I gained even more weight than that. I was pretty damn heavy at the end there. But my reason for bringing that up isn't the congratulations, but rather to give dentists another way to think of it. It's a marketing opportunity.
Sure.
So if you have a contractor who says, hey, we want to take pictures of the practice we've built, if I had said, hey, look, you just built my practice, you want to take pictures of it, I'd like copies of all those pictures, and can you have one of your team write up a short thing and send it into the local paper and just tell everyone about this new practice? It's free advertising, people.
Yeah. Actually, we do a lot of that. A lot of people bring that up, especially when
you deal with some smart dentists then.
Yeah. We especially when we're doing like specialty practices, like did an oral surgeon not too long ago, and he asked if we can advertise for him to other general dentists close
Mm-hmm.
by. Absolutely. Why wouldn't I want to do
I
that?
want you to be successful because I want you to grow
Of
and
course.
then build something new for you.
Of course. Yeah.
So as you progressed and as you built your business, you guys eventually got to the point where you said, look, if I bring all of this stuff in-house, then I've got more control over the process. There are less headaches, there's less chance for mismanagement of the project, which means less time delays on my part, savings on the dentist's part. So what does it mean to you not to just be a vendor, but to, in a very large way, be a partner with these dental professionals that you're building practices for? I mean, what encapsulates that for you?
I mean, when a lot of people use the word partner, but when we use it, we are really their partners. We want to be their partners. And the reason is what encapsulates it is the joy of seeing them succeed. The more they succeed, the more I succeed, the more I'm living in their success, right? And that excites me. That excites me, my company, every one of us, in our company. They get excited when we look at a dentist that we put in there that started from zero and has grown to be wherever they're at today, right? It's joyful. I mean, that's part of the American dream right there. You know, you're being successful. You're not only part of their practice, you're technically part of their family, right? Just like I've seen a lot of dentists grow up in their practice. I've seen their families, their kids, not having kids to now having 3-4 kids. You know, they're all older. That is part of, the joy you live for.
I love it. So talk to me a little bit about the different avatars that you guys service, medical, dental, veterinary, and staying ahead of evolving design norms, but specifically infection control standards and technology needs. It is my perception, whether that is correct or not, that dentistry, we tend to be more technology forward, I know, than veterinarians.
Yep.
And I believe more technology forward than MDs as well, unless, of course, you're dealing with a big hospital. But that our infection control standards really fall pale in comparison to, say, a veterinary hospital that requires a positive pressure HVAC in their operatories. So talk to me a little bit about the complexities of that, and kind of just inform our listeners, since they are all dentists and most of them aren't married to a veterinarian or maybe an MD. Talk to us a little bit about the differences.
I think dentistry goes or has gone up to this point as far as the dental suppliers have taken dentists. It's been in the past.
That was a very nuanced answer. I'm gonna want some more.
No, I know. I'm getting there because in the past, right, and that's why dentistry is ahead in technology than in infection control, and I'll get there because there's other things that's being missed as well, right? Mm-hmm. And in the past, there would be very heavy dentists when they wanted to start. They went to their dental supplier. They went to Shine, Benko, Patterson, right? They got going as much as the knowledge of Benko, Patterson, and Shine, right? So even from a code standpoint, they dictated what dentists should do. And that's where the infection control comes in. That's where OSHA comes in. Like we talk about OSHA. It's not being highly regulated in the dental practices, but it's being highly regulated in other practices, right? But IT is. And again, you talk about IT technology. Why? Because Benko, Patterson, Shine pushed that. And because of that, dentists are a little bit more,
focused
up ahead of the others when it comes to technology than infection control. One area I got to know that it's interesting you're saying that because I noticed that in the surgery market when we're talking about medical gas, right? Category 1. You go back 3 years, even as recent as last year, I've seen errors, right? You go back 3 years. Most oral surgeons that are building a regular oral surgery practice are not category 1, but they should be category 1.
So explain the different categories to us so that we can educate some people.
So yeah, it's a very
I'm not up on.
It's a very complicated situation. So medical gas used to have 3 categories. Now this past year they've pushed it down to 2. So there's category 1 and 2. Back then it used to be 1, 2, and 3, right? And it has to do with the way you're sedating people, right? If you're putting them to sleep or if they're not all the way sleeping, right? So it all has to do with that.
Moderate sedation.
That's correct. So most oral surgeons are putting people to sleep, right? They're equivalent to category 1. That you're putting them to sleep. So why are they not doing it? Because they're not doing it because Benco, Patterson, Shine do not sell category 1 equipment. So they never pushed it, right? But the offices are set up wrong. But because it's not being enforced, it's not being like, it's not like, like in code, you have the fire marshal walking in here and saying, okay, you're in violation, right? There is nothing like that happening unless when something goes catastrophically wrong.
And then they crack down everyone.
And what's happening now is exactly that, right? I have been in some unfortunate expert witness situation where I've seen some unfortunate things happen, specifically with, medical gases and stuff. And now, Patterson, Benco, Patterson, they're being blamed for. Now they're tightening up. Now all of a sudden it's category 1, and it's frustrating some of the dentists, specifically the ones that are not oral surgeon. Like we have one that's a pediatric dentist right now, but the way he's sedating people, he needs to be category 1, right? He keeps telling us, my first office was in category 1. Why do I have to be category 1?
Because the laws changed.
Right? Well, it actually hasn't changed.
Right.
Now
the enforcement changes.
Now they're telling you have to be, right? The enforcements were about the same too, but now they're telling you have to be because they don't want to be under a major lawsuit if something catastrophically happens, right?
So we're going to assume anyone who's listening who does this is not category 1, but what things would they look for in their practice to let them know, hey, look, I'm okay, or hey, I need to really look into this further.
So category 1 is full surgery. You need to have a surgical vac. So there's going to be 2 vacuums. You'll have 1 vacuum for your regular stuff, 1 surgical vac for scavenging and stuff like that. You will have different types of piping, right? Instead of soldering on your pipes, the pipes are going to have to be braced. You need to have a generator, backup generator, because if you
PEX work.
The what?
How about PEX?
Yeah, that works. You can do battery backup, right? But you need to have a way of, if you're during your operation lights go out, you can finish it and get going, right? Then there is fire coding. So your hallways, your operatories that you're doing sedation in has to be fire rated. They're 1 hour fire rated. Same thing has to happen in the hallways. That's category 1 in a nutshell. Right, and then your wires have to be in a conduit line, not exposed. Right, everything is done
and
done
some
for
municipalities force you to do that anyway.
Sure, but again, that's based on codes in different counties and states and stuff like that, right?
But this supersedes those.
This supersedes that, right? And a lot of people mix it up because if they're not educated, they mix up. They're like, "Well, I'm not a surgery center," right? They're mixing category 1 with Quad A surgery center or Triple A surgery center. Those are not the same thing. Quad A is a regulation based on billing. They're looking at other stuff, right? You have to be category 1 in order to be a Quad A, but you don't have to be a Quad A if you're category 1. Category 1 has nothing to do with Quad A, and that's what it used to be, and that's why people didn't do them. Now, why they're getting shocked is because there's a huge price difference. Right, you want to do it. Things are expensive. Just category 1 equipment costs more than regular equipment.
So this brings up another, I think, interesting point when people are building. And since you actually kind of service both sides of this, I think you can give a very fair answer. Plumbing nitrous versus having local delivery. Talk to me about how you would make that decision as a dentist. I know how I did, but since you do both sides, you sell the equipment, you can also do the plumbing.
Sure, there's 2 things, right? One is cost, one is certification. If you want to go through the hassle of being certified, responsible for the certification. But when you're looking at evaluating cost, let's take the certification out of it. It all depends on how much medical gas you're using, right? if people tell me, listen, 75% of my patients I'm going to be using gas on, then I'm going to tell them to plumb it, right? Otherwise, you're going to be running out quick.
Right, because you're using smaller cylinders.
That's right. That's why oral surgeons always plumbed. Pediatric dentists are always plumbed. They use a lot, right? But if you're a general dentist and you're telling me, listen, I'm only doing 30% nitrous, 30% of my patients are going to do nitrous, then, you don't need it. You go with a portable one. That's how I would determine if I'm a, neutral general dentist. If you're an endodontist, you don't need it. The reason I say that because I was shocked. Last year we had an endo that wanted it. I don't know why. I don't.
That's for the after party.
I guess. I guess, but according to them, and of course, when you're looking at it, are the dentists promoting it or not promoting it?
Right.
Right. How are you educating your patients?
Well, I mean, think about it as a business opportunity for that endodontist. If no endodontist anywhere does nitrous, and patients have this mental fixation with nitrous and think, oh, everything's more comfortable, which there's some arguments that you could make for anxiolysis or pain management by using a combination of nitrous and pain medications or anesthesias. I mean, that's a good sellable point, especially if they advertise that specifically, only endodontist in the area who can provide nitrous. Now, that's a business opportunity. And I think that's
but if you're using that for advertisement, then you can still go portable.
Right.
You don't need to plumb it for advertising purposes.
Good point.
Right.
Good point.
So you can still have that, and it's a tactical point, right? Mm-hmm. But what I'm saying is, I think what happens is some dentists, they're afraid of working on the patient themselves. They promote the nitrous. They want the patient to be knocked out. I've heard. Whereas in others, they actually don't promote it. And the reason I said that, I was 18, I got 4 of my wisdom teeth taken out at the same time, right? Mm-hmm. I was at the dentist. I'm not doing it in the dental offices at that time, so I don't know too much about it, right? And my doctor, remember, looked at me and says, you're pretty tolerant in pain. I'm like, yeah. He was like, you don't need to go under. Right? He took them all out at the same time, and I remember watching him do it, and he's like, he's going like this. I'm like, man, this gotta hurt.
So are you ready to make a disapproving frown at me?
Sure.
So whenever I was looking at it, I had come to that same conclusion. We just weren't going to we weren't going to be using nitrous on enough patients for that to make sense to plumb it. I really wanted to plumb it just because clean wise and keeping the operatory uncluttered because of flow issues. Mm-hmm. But we ended up going with because I wanted to make sure I had enough bottles on hand at all times, so that you understand where the decision came from. And I didn't want to have to build out something that could only be used for storage of spare bottles, because most of the portables use I can't remember, is it F size or H size?
For what?
For the cylinders.
Yeah, the F size.
F size, okay. So they only use the F size, which is, if I remember correctly, only 1/3 is efficient cost per volume, right? Mm-hmm. So I really wanted the bigger bottles so I wouldn't have to deal with it. But ended up, the unit I bought, and this is where you're going to make the face, instead of going with the cheapo units that everybody else went with, I bought the Accutron.
Oh. Okay.
So that's definitely one place that some of my my working capital went that didn't have to.
Yeah.
But, oh, goodness. That thing was so expensive.
But that's what I was going to say. You probably...
Oh, I paid a pretty penny.
Blew out a good budget there too.
I did.
Yeah.
So, with emerging technologies, telehealth, the equipment miniaturization, what do you see as the next frontier in dental and medical office design?
Probably AI, I would say. AI is coming, taking out the world.
But I mean, on your side of things, what you're building into the physical plant of the property.
What I'm building, well, AI would take over when it comes to planning, maybe a lot faster than actual physically building. Like I know we're flirting with using AI technology to do floor plans, like especially if it's like the beginning test fits. You're looking at the building, you want to see if your space will fit. AI can do a floor plan for you right now, right? So, but what AI can't do is think beyond that floor plan.
Yeah, you have to know what you're doing to tell AI
That's
what
right.
to do.
So I don't know if, AI will come into the construction world from actual physical work and thinking perspectives, other than maybe inspections, counties, and things like that might start using it differently, and it might dictate, timing and so on the construction timeline perspective. But I see that being a part of everyone's everyday life nowadays. So I see that being definitely the next, so to speak, innovation.
So, with my construction background, I began in municipal and I ended up in residential. Didn't work commercial at all. So, all those, for those of you who don't know, are very, very different worlds.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things in municipal that I always envied and I've always thought would be a great idea for an office design is core wall. I mean, we just don't do that in our practices. And I want you to shoot me down or tell me I'm right here, or maybe give someone some clues, and you'll have to define everything.
Sure.
So my thought has always been, if you build your reception area and you ensure that the reception area has enough seating for your eventual build out, you could build, say, a shotgun style 5-op with your doctor's office, left or right hand side, whatever side your core wall is on, that's the op side, right? Rear located, centrally located, physical. And then you could actually just mirror that design for probably half, maybe 2/3 of the cost of building out everything you need, since you've already got your core wall. If you do it right and you plumb with end caps on the terminus of the slab side, then you could always just pop, connect, frame up, form up, pour, build, and then you could get, instead of a 100% difference in the number of ops, you could actually, if you did that mirror design and kept the same reception area, you could get, by my calculations, about 130% increase in chair delivery design, if I'm explaining things correctly. So imagine, here's your building, here's your reception area.
When you say building, that's
core
the
wall
space. That's your
is
space. Okay.
Here's your core wall.
Mm-hmm.
When you go to rebuild, flip the design, and all of this becomes operatory space. Reception entrance here, pathway in the back, very rear location. You've got your physical plant and your sterilization. Well, sterilization you probably actually want to put in the center over here.
Has to be center, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
I think, dental may be a little bit challenging from the sterilization perspective, and also plumbing. You mentioned plumbing.
Right.
That has to be. Medical, for sure, I see that happening. There's not a lot of plumbing in medical.
Right.
There is no sterilization in medical.
It just seems like a more efficient design philosophy to me.
It could be, yeah. But there will be challenges in building with the dental because of the plumbing line.
Yeah.
You got to be accurate.
Well, it's crossing that hall.
Sure.
Because everything else is easy peasy whenever you're directly connecting through those stub outs.
Yeah.
But crossing the hallway might present an issue. I'll show you my practice floor plan later, because I actually built kind of like this. I made one screw up. I put the physical plan on the wrong side, because remember I had the existing bathroom.
Yeah.
But I'll show you what I did.
And that's another challenge, something existing, right? You wanted to save it, that's why.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah,
because
I can already
knew
imagine.
a bathroom build out is how much right now for a handicap accessible employee bathroom.
If you do just a bathroom build out, probably looking at, with all the vents, flooring, and all that stuff, probably looking at a good $25,000.
And that's kind of where my brain was.
Yeah.
I'd save $25,000 or move it. I saved it.
Yeah. Now, of course, if you're doing it as part of a project, it's probably not exactly $25,000. Right. There's some economy of scale there. But,
absolutely.
But if you were just doing a bathroom, probably looking at $25,000.
So, how do you balance the classics, patient flow, comfort, usability, with the new cutting edge technology and flexibility for unknown future demands?
It's based on discussion with the practitioner, right? First, we understand what is it they want. And I am a major believer on, some people hate me because of this, right? I play devil's advocate. And, balancing it for myself is easy. I'm an easy decision maker. I can prioritize and say, based on the importance level, this is much important than sacrificing. I'll sacrifice, let's say, my technology for my patient flow, right? Understanding the flow that I want to take. But I think most doctors have a challenge in doing that, but it needs to be discussed. We need to talk about it, right? And they have to, going back to saying open-minded, they have to be open-minded to kind of listen and say, oh, okay, this guy is saying that. Let me actually think about it and see what it ends up being in the futures before I make a decision. But when you balance something, always, whether it's what you just said, whether it's balancing for your budget, right? It's a give or take. You can't have everything. You got to look at what's the most important, right? And where you're more comfortable with, what you value more, because everybody values different things more.
Absolutely.
Right? What's more valuable to you might be a little bit different for me, right? There is no cookie cutter way of doing it. Yes, you can do it and get away with it, but it might not be the right way for you, right?
I love it.
That's the advice I give people before we even start. And then when we start, we talk about things, right? What are you trying to achieve? Here's what I recommended. Have you seen it this way? I remember back in the day, there was a doctor had an issue with checkout process. And I told him, I'm like, look, have you ever thought about doing the checkouts in the operatories?
Yeah, absolutely.
He's like, well, I've never been part of a practice that did that. How does that work? Right?
You train one assistant and you just get a card swipe.
So to him, it was impossible. For me, this is when I understood. I'm like, look, sometimes what's obvious for me is not obvious for everyone, right?
That's a unique value you're bringing.
I broke it down for him. He didn't understand. Then I had to take him to an office that does this. And he was fascinated by it. He ended up opening his practice like that, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and to this day, he's like, look, I love it. I don't even understand why people don't do it that way.
Well, because just like you, they didn't know about it. They didn't understand it.
Well, back then also, the problem was technology. Mm-hmm. See, everyone listens to the different experts, right? You go and talk to an IT guy. The IT guy says, I don't recommend it. Why? Because there's IT challenges when you're checking people out with the credit card, this and that.
Let me put a fine point on that. None of your contractors have your best interest at heart.
Right.
They have their best interest at heart. And whatever's going to be the biggest pain in the ass for them is the thing they're going to tell you not to do.
Right. And that's what was happening, right? Until they do research and then you challenge the IT people and they're like, yeah, this is possible. It's doable. I don't recommend it, but it's doable. They don't recommend it because they don't want to go through the headache, right? Again, it starts from, like you said, none of the contractors, your IT guy, your equipment guy, your construction guy, everyone wants to do things the easy way. It's a cookie cutter way. It's easy. They know it. They don't want to go research it, right? But it does exist. And fortunately for this guy, he listened. Not only listen, I love it. When I see people exposed and wanting to learn more and stuff, you also want to teach more.
Yes.
Right? So I volunteer. I said, listen, why don't we go to his office and look at it? He's doing it. He went, he looked at it. Not only he did it, he hired that same IT guy that worked for that office. And the other IT guy ended up hating me for a little bit, but it works out for the doctor.
So, Artin, what do most doctors underestimate in the true cost of a build? What's the biggest budgeting mistake you see made over and over and over again?
Biggest budgeting mistake is getting a price from a contractor before things are specified. That is the biggest budgeting mistake. The second biggest is falling in love with a certain design or a design of an equipment that they just cannot see without. Like they don't want to step back and say, "Do I really need this?"
Pelton and Crane Renaissance cabinets.
Do I really?
I know
need
internally
this?
you were going, "You bought those? They're so expensive."
Yeah, I mean, for a startup dentist,
Right.
you know,
Hey, scratch and dent, man. That's the only way I could justify it.
yeah. I mean, you know, it's okay if you're going like the higher end, everything, right? But if you're saving money here and then you blow it here, that's a problem too, right? It's like, let's stay balanced.
Absolutely.
You know, we got to stay balanced. So the biggest challenge, I think, the biggest mistake is really they go to a contractor, ask for prices, thinking that they're just building something that's black and white simple and they can understand the prices. I have a client right now that I'm evaluating for. After this happened, I can explain that. I always tell people, like, what you're doing, you're not realizing. You're going to a car dealer and saying, I want a car.
Okay.
What car? What kind of tires, engine, body style? See, to them, when this happens, they're like, oh, I'll tell you what flooring. I want LVT flooring, Shaw. Like, and you think I can price that out? That's it? There's so many little things out there. Not only mention, once you get the physical, stuff out of the way, the ones that you can see aesthetically, there's also the engineering part of it. How I run your air conditioner makes a big difference in the cost, right? There is a doctor right now here in California that I'm comparing prices to. And she called me and she said, look, we know we want to go with this contractor, but, we heard of you. Can you look at these costs and tell me if these are reasonable? Because we like their work, but we're questioning it, right? And I'm looking at the contract, and there are a couple areas that were extremely, expensive. But one area I was pointing it out. I'm like, listen, this guy has it that they're giving you 2 air conditioners, 5 ton. The building has 2 air conditioners, 3 ton. One, why are they increasing the size from 3 to 5? 2, is that really the right thing to do? Or is it better to add a 3rd unit? Right? And you don't know that.
The office is going to always run cold because
that's
to
right.
hit the humidity levels, they're going to be sucking out.
And I was using that as an example of why she should have the engineer do the drawings before this contractor gives the price. I'm like, because of this, even me, by looking at this cost, I'm going to have a hard time determining and giving you advice on what's right, what's not. The only way I can do that is talk to the contractor and see why he's bidding what he's bidding. Why did he price that out? Because that alone makes a big difference. Now, there's other things, lighting. I'm looking at your lighting cost. It says $290,000 for a 3,500 square foot of a space. $290,000. What kind of lighting? The only thing that comes to my mind is what kind of expensive lighting are they giving you?
They're gold plated, my friend.
Right? I mean, is it really necessary for that? Right? So there's so many like red lines when I look at a proposal. There are so many red flags that come up that a normal person not being in construction does not understand.
Let's talk a little bit about lighting. I think it's something that a lot of dentists don't know, and I know that they don't know this, or at least they don't care, because I've gone to their practice and I see different color fluorescence in every single freaking fixture.
Well, now it has to be LED. The code says LED, and now fluorescents are out.
So let's talk about color temperature, though.
Yeah.
What color temperature should dentists be looking for color matching?
Anywhere from 3,000 to 3,500, I think is the right temperature. And also depends. Are we talking about in the ops? Are we talking about in the hallways?
In the ops,
right?
Because that's where the color match is taking place. In my hallways, I'm going to want a 3,200.
That's
absolutely, because it's a warmer color.
That's right.
In your ops, you're probably going to want a 5,700 or something like that.
Right. That's right. So you got to look at all that stuff. Right? Also, if you're practicing during the daytime, you got a lot of sunlight coming in. That helps.
I didn't have any windows, Artin. I didn't have any windows at all. They wouldn't let me cut any in the side of the building. So sad.
That's what happens on the first floor when you're going. Yeah, But yours was not it wasn't a freestanding building. It was part of a.
It was part of a strip mall.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, they wouldn't let me do it. I offered. It's like, I'll pay for it, whatever it needs.
Yeah.
So when a doctor is planning to open a new practice, you are in a great position to answer this question. What percentage of their total project cost should they be allocating to equipment versus construction versus design?
Great question. Again, it comes down to preference, and the preference is what kind of a look you want to achieve. But in general, you're probably looking at 45% of your cost going through construction, right? A good 25% goes to your equipment. And when I'm talking about equipment, I'm talking about like large equipment and small equipment and stuff, right? Generally speaking, you want to spend maybe 8% on cabinetry, because I usually separate that. I separate it because cabinetry is a very interesting topic. When I got into industry, in the dental industry, I soon found out that cabinets are not being priced with construction. And when I say this to dentists, they get shocked. I'm like, that's not how it is, right? Medical, go ask any doctor. When you price out their project for construction, they get shocked if cabinetry is not part of it. They're like, where are my cabinets, right? But in dentistry, it's not. The reason it's not, again, it goes back to the equipment companies, right? They want to do the cabinets as part of equipment, like you mentioned, $800 versus the $3,000 Pelton and Crane side cabinets, right? That it became part of equipment. So a lot of contractors, they were confused. Should we leave that out? So I always, because of that, I've been separating cabinets. So that's why I say about 8% is your cabinetry, and these percentages also depends on if you're a startup or not.
Right.
If you're a relocation, if you're fully operational, it kind of changes things, right? Your budget is going to be a little bit higher too on those stuff. But then you're not going to have too much equipment to buy, so your percentages on equipment is lower, right? All you got to do is relocate it, right? So that would depend on. The other areas is we talk about working capital, right? You want to have a good, healthy working capital budget and a startup marketing, right? And usually IT and startup marketing is probably a good 3 to 5% each. That's where the percentages are. But by far, your biggest cost is going to be your construction car, which is about 45, close to 50%. And that's what shocks me when people take their highest cost and they do it in a cookie cutter way, not properly. They're making the biggest gamble on the cookie cutter way.
No, absolutely. Well, a lot of people would rather trust someone else than themselves. I always bet on me. So one thing that you may speak more to this, I don't know, do you guys have a custom cabinetry shop or not?
We don't have a custom cabinet shop. We work with a custom cabinetry shop.
Do you guys work with Beal or who?
Who?
Beal?
No, we work with MCC. They're out of Canada.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
One of the things that dentists need to know, that I know you probably know, is that if you do get custom cabinets, you need to make sure that the custom cabinets are each serial numbered, because you can buy a custom cabinet from a carpenter. It's not serial numbered. Well, that just becomes part of your physical build out, and that's not something you can deduct now or depreciate. Now, once you get one that has a serial number on it, though, you can depreciate that because it's equipment and it's not a fixture.
That's right.
So something that you guys should definitely be aware of.
Well, one is depreciation, but what people don't know also, that also when you're dealing with landlords, that becomes a
fixture. Stay
exactly.
with the
That's correct. So a lot of people don't know that, right?
Absolutely.
Cabinetry could be part of construction.
Yep. And
not if it's got serial number.
You
prove
that cabinetry you just stole from the business because it was part of what you did as your tenant investment. So yeah, there's so many little nuances to this stuff that you just can't cover it all.
Yeah.
So, in your experience, how often do practices go over budget, and what is usually the hidden culprit?
When I started in this business, there was a lot of experienced older gentleman that worked at Shine. And one time he told me, he's like, Art, people go over budget all the time. They just don't want to admit it. It's almost like going to watch a bad movie and you come out, someone's like, how was your movie? You're like, it was great. Because they don't want you to know you saw a bad movie, right?
Right.
I laughed at that, but it kind of stuck with me over the year. I mean, this was a 20-year conversation I'm talking about, right? So how often, I would say a good probably 50% of the time people are going over budget. Whether they admit it or not is a different thing, right? And the reason why some people don't admit it because their budget changes.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know how many times it's like all of a sudden, I see the doctor is overspending. I can tell you're 30,000 over the budget. Where did it come from? All of a sudden you got money, right? Or sometimes when you're in the project, the bank has to raise the money because you've done some questionable things where the bank is like, okay, because the bank is your partner, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they don't provide the money, what do? You fail. Their money fails, right? So a lot of times the bunk goes over. And I can tell you right now, I'm going to make a very bold statement, and some of the consultants may not like it. If you're using a consultant, you're blowing your budget. You just don't know it because you're adding cost to your project.
That one cut deep.
You know,
my experience with a consultant when I first started up. Now there's great consultants.
I'm talking about a consultant on the building side, not practice consultant. Sorry, I want to clarify from a practice consultant. That's a different story.
Bank of America, because I was only 1 year out of dental school when I started my practice, and they don't loan to people 1 year out of dental school.
Mm-hmm.
So
they don't.
Not generally, no.
Okay.
No, they may now.
Now they do. I think there's a
used to
program.
not.
There are programs where they do.
That would have been nice.
Yeah.
So what Bank of America did for me is they said they would loan me the money, but I had to use their consultant. What I didn't realize is left hand doesn't know what right hand's doing in Bank of America. And they had one of the vice presidents, and there are 6 billion vice presidents, guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an important position. It's like P.
Everyone is called a vice president.
Right? So I didn't know that. And so this guy was like, well, yeah, we can get you the money, but you have to use our consultant to make sure. It turns out it was an old vice president, and he and this other guy had a scam going where he would make sure dentists had to use him and he'd get a kickback. It was a whole thing.
That's your consultants.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Look, when I tell you a bad experience, I mean a bad experience.
Yeah.
The consultant helped me to hire, right? Because they were like, well, you're a new dentist. You really don't know what you're doing. We'll help you find the right people. So
I bet you I know who you were speaking of.
We'll talk about it off air.
Yeah.
I don't want to get sued.
No, I get it.
But it starts with a V. Yeah. Is that the one?
It starts with a V.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah. Oh, I know this guy too.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. First name starts with an M.
Yeah.
So if there's an MV out there and you guys were thinking about using him as a consultant, don't. So they hired this office manager for me. What I didn't know is they had hired the office manager as their tool in the practice. She was falsifying reports and embezzling money.
Wow.
Because they give a money back guarantee, right? This particular company. And so I'm looking at my reports. I'm like, this isn't making sense. I know I didn't do this much, but I pull the reports from the practice management software, and it says I did. They were adjusting values.
Wow.
So the day that I canceled my contract with them, she quit the next day, and I called her to get a password for something. And on her voicemail now, instead of saying, I'm not going to say the girl's name, but now instead of saying we'll say Sophia. This is Sophia with Veach. I just said Veach Consulting. So I'll probably blurb that maybe. But so this is Sophia with this company, and it just rocked my world because not only were they stealing from me, they hadn't really done anything for my practice. They just cost me money. And the whole thing was a scam to begin with because they were working with some VP on the inside of Bank of America.
Usually consultants are like that. I'm not saying they're scamming.
Right.
What I'm saying is they're referring people that are giving them a kickback.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm strongly against using consultants. I've done something similar. I own restaurant. And I remember when I opened up my restaurant,
That's a hard business.
I opened up a restaurant consultant, and same situation, right? And I learned that the hard way. But it's you gotta hire. One thing people have to know is hire people for what they're doing, right? And the example is this: I have a friend who's a dentist, and I've built these practices, and he was opening up a second practice, and on his first practice, he needed help in marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And then he came to me. He's like, I hired X, who is the other consultants that I'm talking about, not to mention any names, right? And I'm like, why'd you hire him? They're like, he's like, well, I needed marketing help. I'm like, why didn't you hire a marketing company?
Right.
Right? You hired a consultant who's going to go bring in a marketing company. That's like you needing a painter.
And the consultant's going to get a kickback from the marketing
Oh, of
company,
course,
so that's
100%.
going to cost you more.
I'm
And
like-
you're paying the consultant.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's like you needing to paint your house, and you come and hire me as a general contractor to paint your house.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you right now, you need a painter.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need a general contractor to
Or
paint
you're
your
going to
house.
say, yes, I can do that. And you're going to tack
Then I'm
on
gonna bring in a
15 or
painter,
20%, right?
Right. So, I mean, people not realizing they're just, and you said it right. People love to use other people for help. They just don't know who, right?
Yep.
And this is becoming a major error, I think, in the industry. Or they do this a lot. They hire practice consultants that are great in running practices, but then they put them in charge in building the practice. Well, guess what?
They don't know.
They don't know. As much as I know about dentistry, running practices, I've seen it, I've talked to dentists. You hire me to run your practice, I don't know. Can I tell you that I know and you hire me? Sure. Can I get by? Sure. But I don't know. There's going to be errors I'm going to make. That's what's happening. And I don't know why these companies they just love getting in the middle of things. Why are they doing it? They think it's they can keep that a cookie cutter approach. It's not. Like I tell two dentists, I'm like, you guys could be doing the same thing, but it goes differently.
Yep.
Right? Every practice is different. Every business is different. So, there's no one way of doing it. Generally speaking, yes, you're going to use the same trades, but
I'll take it one step further. I think that a lot of consultants, their number one goal, not job, their number one goal is to convince the dentist that dentistry is a special little snowflake and that it's different than any other business out there. And that's simply not true. Business is business is business.
that's right.
And the same fundamentals apply to all of them. I've had lots of different startup businesses in lots of different industries, and I can speak with authority on that. Businesses all run the same way. It's maybe the clientele is different, but that doesn't change anything for the fundamentals. And if you have a consultant who's trying to convince you that the dental business is different than anything else in the world and that you have to use a consultant so you'll know what the heck you're doing, run as fast as you can.
Right. I'm glad you agree, being experienced in the industry.
Absolutely.
Not a lot of people buy that. And again, part of it is because, like I said, they need help. They just don't know what help they need. And
Yeah,
they get
I
stuck
agree.
with a consultant.
So Artin, talk to me. We've covered a lot of ground. We've covered a lot of different topics here, and I know we've left something on the table. What question should I have asked you that you think will bring the most value to my listeners?
What questions should you have asked me? The process, probably. The process of going through in a build out time frame. How long does it take? And the reason I say that is some dentists, they think, well, I'm not ready for it, but they think whenever they're ready for it, they're going to build it in 2 months, right? It's not. It doesn't work that way,
No.
right? You kind of have
8
to.
months to a year,
Yeah, it's from the time you say I'm ready to go, by the time you find your location, negotiate it, right, is a year long. That's if you're lucky,
Right.
right? That's if everything goes as planned, right? And the process is important because, and again, I dedicate this to incorrect information out there in the industry for the people to kind of know. And the cookie cutter approach. People have tried to take this in a step-by-step process. A comes before B. It's not like that.
Mm-hmm.
You've done this. Everything goes at the same
Everything
time.
comes at you at the same time.
Everything comes at the same time. yes, some things you make decisions before the others, but you don't do B before A. You just don't finish making the decision and now go look for equipment. No, right? It's got to come at the same time. The decision making process is A, B, C, D, but the decision making process is quick. And that's the number one thing, the number one challenge I see out there when it comes to processes. People start the design, we finish the floor plan. When it goes to engineering, we need to know what equipment they're buying. They don't even know who they're buying it from. They don't even know what they're looking at, right? And I tell them, I'm like, didn't we go through this? I said, look, you got to start looking into it. They haven't looked into it. They don't even have prices. So without knowing what you're buying, it's hard for the engineer to finish your drawing. So what does that do? Creates delays, right? You said, what's the percentage of people blowing their budget, right? It's higher if you talk about timeline. I would say 70, 80% of projects delay.
Cost of opportunity.
Yeah. 70%. Actually, there's a study on the official project management website that say if you don't hire a good project manager, if you don't hire a project manager, your project has a 70% chance of delay.
Wow.
So, and I can point out a lot of delays that happen. And some delays, again, are noticeable. Some delays are not. Some delays, the minute the doctors realize they're hurting is when it hits the pocket directly, not indirectly, right? Like I had a project, I was talking to a client where he was experiencing delays. The only thing was he had negotiated a long period of free rent, right? So he was like, yeah, I know, it doesn't matter, I have free rent. But to me, that's still a delay that's hurting your budget. If you opened 2 months before, we talked about this, you could have made money for 2 months while not having rent to pay for. So, yes, you're not feeling it, or maybe you anticipated the delays, and that's why you got more free rent and you were able to get it. But since you got it, why not eliminate the other one, right? You've done one thing right. Let's do the second thing right. Let's get you running, and you're now more efficient. You're like going, both engines are working at that point.
Yeah, no doubt.
So, yeah, questions would be process-related, timeline-related questions. Each process has its own time frame. Don't rush through things. Also, some people do that. They make that mistake. They think they're going fast, but they're rushing. There's a big difference. I coach sports. I've coached my son's AAU basketball team. I keep telling them, I'm like, there's a big difference between rushing and being fast.
Yep.
Right? You be fast. Don't rush.
My first martial arts instructor, my Sabanim, told me, slow is fast.
Yeah.
Go slow.
I've actually heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, man, I really enjoyed our conversation, and I thank you for coming out to do this. But before we sign off, I'd really like you to just kind of tell people where all you work. If they listen to this and they were interested, in having you do their project for them, or they want to reach out to you because they just like a second opinion on something, even if you don't work in the area. I'm sure you guys could do that.
Absolutely.
So how can they get in contact with you?
So our physical address, we're in Virginia, Dulles, Virginia, close to Dulles Airport. For those of you guys that know the area. We're in Sterling, Virginia. However, our construction company works in that 200-mile radius from the Dulles, Virginia, but our design and project management, we're nationwide. We run projects. Right now, we have projects in North Carolina, California, Colorado, New Mexico is one we just got that I'll be going there in 2 weeks. So we're pretty much everywhere in the U.S. managing projects. And part of the project managers is, again, owner's representation. It starts from day one of you wanting to build a practice. We come in and we make sure, the space you're finding, we work the realtor that's on ground to make sure the space you're finding is proper. It'll fit your budget. It'll make sense of what you want to do. All the way to running your project, hiring the contractor, hiring, getting quotes from equipment, figuring out like everything you went through. We figure out what's the best way to do it, and you make your decisions. We help you make the decisions, which is the number one difference when you talk about consultants and project manager. We're doing the legwork. We're showing you different ways out. And I tell people, by having us, everyone you talk to in your area is going to say, you need to create a good team. You need to hire a contractor that knows dental. By hiring us, you open up your doors by hiring contractors that have not done dental, because that's what we watch. And by doing that, we are able to bring the cost down. In fact, we love working with contractors that have done medical but not dental, because they're more open to different ways of doing things, and they're more open to listening to us when we're giving them suggestions
Interesting.
and recommendations.
It's too bad they can't work with someone who hasn't done either. Then you don't have the medical tax
Yeah.
added to the cost, right?
Yeah. So yeah, wherever we're in the nation, whoever needs our help,
So
we
give
have.
them the digits, man. How do they get in contact?
Oh yeah,
with you?
our office number is 703-430-6669. You can visit us at armincoinc.com. That's www.armincoinc.com. We have created an educational platform that's howtoopenadentalpractice.com. You can go on that as well and check out good articles. I try to put a lot of good articles. I write them myself, and I get more industry experts involved in that as well. Or you can email us at info@armincoinc.com.
Fantastic. Well, guys, that's all for our podcast today. I hope that you've gotten some good information, or at the very least, something that makes you think a little bit more deeply. And maybe some of you guys out there had an epiphany and said, hey, maybe it's time. Maybe I should open my practice. Even if you didn't, that's it for me today. This is Doc. I'm out.
And watch me educate. Yeah, we been coulda started, but it's never late. Do it for my kids, yeah, let's set it straight. Do it for your kids, gotta set it straight. It's time to regulate. We need change now.